Drew Weatherhead, probably my favorite Canadian Jiu-Jitsu guy. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Really good. How are you, Wes?
I'm good, but I will ask the questions, okay?
Mhm.
We have some ground rules here, man. So we
All
met a
right.
couple years ago. I'd followed you for years, and met you in Maine a couple years ago. I had to skip the Origin camp last year. My daughter decided to get married.
Okay. How rude.
And expensive, right? I could have paid for that main camp many times over. I'm just saying, all right. But I prepaid already, so I'm heading there this year. So hope you can make it, and be good to catch up. But you are a man of many talents. I followed your social media for years, but you've got a new book, Consciousness, Reality, and Purpose, and I was like, what in the hell is this?
Mhm. Yeah, as far as marketing moves go, this is completely off brand, which is catching a lot of people by surprise, but it's the difference
Yeah.
between the brand and the person, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, what level black belt are you? One,
First degree.
first degree. You've got some cool memes. You've got rash guards and t-shirts that are freaking hilarious. Uh, Great videography. I mean, good content. And now all of a sudden, like from left field, here comes this.
Mhm.
So explain yourself, mister.
Yeah, this one came out of left field for me too, believe it or not. I had no intentions ever of becoming an author in my life. It wasn't even on the board. I hadn't even ever considered it was something you could do. I thought you had to go and be a journalist or learn how to like go to college to do these sorts of things. In the weird technological era we live in, you can just write and publish, self-publish a book in the same way that you don't have to go to a radio station or a TV station to have a podcast. You can just do it. And so, sort of connecting the two together through the podcast that I have been pretty steadily doing for the last year now, called the Social Disorder Podcast, a whole lot of different thoughts were being either presented to me or requiring me to go heavily down certain rabbit holes to do my own research on a bunch of different stuff. Like we do 5 episodes a week. So that's, we did over 200 episodes in a year, which is a lot. It's a lot of information. And it just, this whole ball of information was building up in my brain, and it started to kind of talk to each other in there and started asking really uncommon and deep philosophical questions that just led me down these paths towards these three major human level conversations around what is consciousness, what is our reality, and how do we find our purpose. These are massive human questions that I don't think a lot of people do themselves the justice of asking themselves, maybe even later into their lives if they ever do at all. So this was, I guess, partly from my own curiosity, but also then as a value add to people who want to or haven't asked these questions of themselves yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the old adage? Most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Mhm.
Uh, or they, they I forget the exact saying, but it's like, yeah, he's not, he's not 80, he's 20. He just lived that 1 year for 60 years.
Yeah.
Like they don't grow, they don't make any progress. Um, I usually train at noon for jujitsu, and there's a guy, a black belt, and he's a great human being, but his game is just pressure and brutality. And I'm now a brown belt. I can kind of hold my own against him. But I get pissed off, it's like he just tries this one move, and it's just a choke in the jaw. It's not even a choke, right? And he knows it's in the jaw, and I won't tap. I'm like, screw this. And I finally get out, because it's exhausting, as to apply a choke takes energy. I mean, it takes energy to absorb a choke.
Yeah.
And I finally get out and bum rush him, pass his guard, knee on belly. We finish in mount, but I'm whooped, and I'm talking to another friend of mine. It's a black belt, and he's like, his game stalled, and
Mhm.
and it's ego, and like, why do we have to go this hard? But I mean, he doesn't evolve his jiu-jitsu game, but I mean, jiu-jitsu is life, right? People,
Yeah.
they don't evolve in their own lives.
Mhm. I
Um,
think a lot of people, they don't realize until later into the martial arts is the amount of art that goes into what we're doing.
yes,
Everybody sees the
yes,
martial aspect because it's the most obvious. It's the kinetic part, it's the material part, but the philosophy side of it that you both learn by absorbing it through osmosis, but also just retrospectively after you've done it for a long enough time, it absolutely translates into all sorts of other avenues of what it is to exist as a human.
yeah. So when you say we do the podcast, do you have a co-host or somebody helping you
Uh,
produce it?
No, no, it's a one-man show more or less. I bring guests on, but about I'd say 60 to 70% of the episodes are solo episodes with myself, just talking topics and thoughts. And then I'll bring other people on to talk about their specialties or they'll sort of give their take on some of my thoughts. And then, I spin off down other rabbit holes that I got to go.
So you're doing at least 3 days a week of just solo?
Yeah, yeah, 3 to 5. Yeah.
Man, that's intense. What how are you doing that? What are you researching? I mean, are you talking about things that you're reading? How do you keep that interesting? Because that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah. No, for sure. Interestingly, once you have somewhat of an idea of, I mean, you can speak to jujitsu with this. I mean, the analogies are endless, right? But once you have a holistic idea of what either the game is philosophically or in the martial sense, then you can just sort of see any given thing and give your take on it. So, I mean, we get the news cycle is relentless. You can have 20 articles or stories a day that you're like, that's interesting. I'm going to look into this and then give your take on what you looked into. And I mean, I can ramble. I've got a little bit of gab going on where I can not just give my take, sort of correlate them between other ideas that I've had that are similar in the same thought space. And I find it's intriguing. My listeners like it, and it is kind of its own art form, though. You figure out how to do it the more you do it.
Yeah, for sure. So so you woke up one day and you're sitting at your keyboard, uh, chewing on an energy bar, and there's words on the screen, and you said, "Oh, what the hell's happening?"
Not so much. It's a little more nuanced than that. It really spawned out of the pandemic, for multiple reasons. Firstly, I had a podcast that was a predecessor to this one, which was the Because Jitsu podcast. So I just branded it after my meme page, which is how most people know me online, and just talk mostly about jujitsu stuff, sometimes about world events, but you'd pull it back to jujitsu and try to keep it on topic. But in the meantime, the world was going to hell and we weren't supposed to talk about it. And there were so many things that we were supposed to talk about that at some point it just got too much for me. And I decided to hell with it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the things that matter because I'm tired of talking about better arm bars. Well, people are, their lives are falling apart and we're supposed to just not talk about the elephant in the room. So I rebranded my podcast a year ago, February 2022, starting with an episode called The Elephant in the Room, where I just went off for about an hour on all these different things. Like I lost my business over the pandemic due to Canadian restrictions and mandates. Nobody cared. Nobody's allowed to talk about it. Nobody's allowed to question it. My sister got paralyzed by the shots, not supposed to talk about it, not supposed to believe it, not supposed to, bring it up publicly. And I'm like, you know what? No, no more. No more. I'm going to talk about all this stuff. And to speak to your point about what is there to talk about that much? Well, when you're allowed to talk about anything, when you give yourself permission to talk about anything, you don't have to worry about social media or a newscaster telling you what you can and can't talk about. It turns out there's like 90% of what there is to talk about still out there to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I love the old adage, you don't talk about sex, money, religion, politics, and mixed company. And I'm like, well, what else is there to talk about?
Yeah, it gets pretty
You
vanilla, doesn't it?
know, yeah, I'm not good at small talk. I'll just go home. I just won't show up. So let's talk about things that mean things, but people can't talk. People
Mm,
can't, people cannot communicate. They cannot deduce. They cannot have a civil discourse with someone who sees things differently than them. And I think it's by design. There's another elephant in the room.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, well, most of our discourse these days tends to be, I would say, if I had to guess, probably upwards of 50, between 50 and 75% of all discourse people have is online through social platforms or what have you. And that is a totally different way of trying to converse back and forth because it's more about it's more about ego, it's more about my opinion and just giving your 2 cents instead of actually having a human conversation, which is the default. When you have a human in front of you, you're more cordial because you have like life in-person, face-to-face interaction. It's just a wholly different thing. And the problem is we've got a society now, to speak to the social disorders out there, we've got an entire society out there that has either absorbed this style of communication as default, or they've been raised in it and they don't know the difference. And they actually take the virtual style of interaction into the physical where it doesn't exist and it doesn't play well, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. You see shows on both like fiction, but like documentaries showing prisoners. And there's a pecking order, right? There's rules that they follow internally, not the prison rules, like the real rules put on by the gangs and whatever. And you always hear about respect, and if you disrespect someone, right, you're going to get hurt in that environment. And I saw a quote, I forget exactly how it was, but it's like, we became uncivilized when it became uncivilized to basically smack the shit out of somebody when they get out of line, right? Now everybody's polite and demure. And it's like, sometimes a dude needs to get punched in the mouth. It's like, okay, I'll buy you a beer and we can, it's all good, but don't do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I know the quote you're talking about, something about how civilized people will be more polite if they know that they can catch an axe in the head if they don't,
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we were born in 100 or 200 years too late.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So tell me about the book then. What are you answering questions? Are you asking more questions? Is it meant to get people just to think? Are you trying to give answers?
Well, how hubris would it be for me to talk about consciousness and reality and purpose and give everybody all the answers to those? There's nothing but questions in all of those, but it's the questions
Dude,
that
you're a
people,
black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
all
I
right?
know, like, you get this knowledge, they give you a chip, right? That just gives you this infinite wisdom that doesn't happen.
No, unfortunately not. No, I
Damn
try to
it.
stay
I've
away
been
from
lied to for 6 years. Oh,
try to stay away from the idea that if you're an expert in one thing, you're an expert in all things. And this is a falsehood that a lot of people fall into. So I'll put it out there right away. I'm not looking to answer questions for you. I'm looking for people to ask themselves the questions, which is really where the power comes from. So I go into 9 different chapters on each of those topics, 9 chapters on consciousness, 9 chapters on reality, and 9 chapters on purpose. And I like that it follows in that direction because from consciousness naturally moves into reality as your consciousness does allow for, disallow for what you perceive as real. And that's a whole conversation that can get very philosophical and very fascinating, but also it has a lot of power in trying to take the power back over what you perceive as real. And what other people are trying to tell you is speaking back, I think it was nothing but just propaganda on propaganda. And they projected a world that was not actual. And it changed society in massive, massive ways that wouldn't have happened if people took a little more sovereignty over their mind and were able to do that critical thinking thing instead of doing that get in line thing. So from consciousness to reality, and then it leads towards purpose. Once you understand these things a little bit more, ask yourself the questions that lead you towards understanding, then it actually becomes possible to find your purpose. And to speak to your point about people that stopped or stalled at 20 and they died at 80 and they really learned nothing in between. We live in a culture where you're expected to basically pick a career or a vocation by age 20, 18, sometimes right after you graduate, pick a vocation and stick until you're 65. And between then and now, you try to get as good as you can at your vocation. By the end of it, now you're allowed to live your life again. You can make choices again. And I think that's a massive disservice to so many people out there that believe that is allowed to do. But meanwhile, you can take control of that process at any given point along the way and break that cycle. And all it takes is, first of all, the understanding that you can. And second of all, going out there and asking these types of questions that can lead you towards the answers that then lead you towards fulfillment, which I think is what most people are missing in life. Their purpose is missing, which therefore means that they can never find fulfillment in what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the old adage? It doesn't matter what the truth is if you can get them to ask the wrong questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, if I, if I'm playing hide and go seek and, I'm here in my office, but I make you think that I'm in the house next door. I can make all the noise I want. You're never going to find me over there.
Yeah.
But like that's what they've done to us, right? Like, go to college. Like this whole college debate. I go to college, get a degree, and have a fulfilled life. I'm like, really? Who says?
Mhm. It's a prescribed life at that point. This all had a major shift around the, what was it, about 1920s or so, when Rockefeller basically took over and instituted the public school system of America, which changed from a typical charter system, which was more old world. It was more Socratic. You would ask questions. It was more critical thinking. And he changed it, and he was very public about why he wanted it changed. Very public. This was not a conspiracy. He said, I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And so he basically changed this thing to produce automatons. You wanted to get people who knew how to read something, repeat something, show up on time. And they built this sort of Pavlovian response to a bell that would be good for when they went to the factory. And that they did great with that. They built an empire off that. But what they did in the meantime is they dumbed down their society in a way that critical thinking isn't even on the table. It's not even considered laudable. All you're supposed to do is just know the answers that you've been given and repeat them so that you can pass the test.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. They just teach to the test.
Mhm.
Um, so how are you getting the word out on this? I mean, how long did it take you to write it? And then, like, did you have a big vision on what to do with it, or like, are you taking this kind of one step at a time?
It's kind of hard to explain because I've had a couple people ask me this question, like, what was your process? Because I would like to, clearly you've started something and finished something. So if I want to do that, I'll just follow your process. And man, like it was almost third party. It's really hard to explain, but the thoughts, like I said, had gathered in my brain for so long that by the time I came to put pen to paper, or in this case, fingers to keyboard, it just flowed right out in this very strange way that all I had to do was give it the out, and it came out. So I started with the idea of those three major focuses: consciousness, reality, and purpose. And then I said, all right, I'm going to do three sub focuses within each one, and then three chapters within each sub focus, which led to 9 chapters for each, which led to 27 chapters. So I basically had my layout right there, and it was all arbitrary. I didn't have to, but I just decided, okay, this will be how I branch out for each of these things. I'm going to give myself basic premise of what to go for, and then just start filling in the blanks. And once I went to fill in the blanks, I found that it was absolutely very, very easy, because most of those topics were things that I had talked about both myself and with very, very smart people over the last 6 to 8 months before that. So it was more like it was reporting back more than it was trying to think of something new.
Hmm. So, you're going live with this now. Do you have other plans? I mean, are you going to do workshops around this? Are you going to try to coach people through this, how to think more clearly? What happens next?
For now, everything has been leading up to the writing and finally the self-publishing of this, so it's out there in the public for people to have. As it stands right now, we're recording Wednesday. It's going to come out live worldwide on Amazon on Friday, so a couple days away. People can pre-order it right now in the Kindle digital version as well as the hardcover physical version. And I'm working right now on the Audible version too, so it'll be available on audiobook as well. And between those three formats, I'm looking for massive distribution is what it is. I want to get the word out so that people can come experience it. And then at that point, almost like in the way that it naturally came into reality, I want to see naturally what it leads towards. So it may be coaching, it may be public speaking, it may be going on other people's podcasts to talk about these big ideas and start, batting the ideas back and forth between intellectuals. I'm really happy that it's done, and I kind of want it to pick up its own life and see where it goes. In the meantime, I've got enough social presence to push it out into the ether and then see where it lands.
Yeah. How do you juggle both? Because promoting a book, writing a book, promoting it, doing this podcast versus your jujitsu stuff. I mean, they're totally different things. How do you manage all that?
Well, I mean, this is the secret to life, and especially when it comes to business, really. And I'm sure there's no surprise to you or any of your listeners, but if you find something that you love doing and you tie that into some sort of vocational avenue, it's not work. So I probably work like every waking hour of every single day, but none of it ever feels like work. I'm doing jujitsu. I'm posting about jujitsu, jokes about jujitsu. I'm selling rash guards about jujitsu. I'm talking about all sorts of fascinating topics that fascinate me with fascinating people. And then I'm writing it down in a book of fascinating things. Like none of that to me is work. And it's really like some days I want to stay up later than I should stay up to continue doing it.
Yeah, that's cool. How did you start the because jujitsu? Because that's
Oh, yeah.
always been fun and it's cool. I mean, you got a big following. Instagram just looked up, 178,000 followers. I mean, you're doing something right there.
Yeah. So this happened when I was a purple belt around I want to say 2016, 2015. I think it was September of 2015. So it's been going for around 8 years at this point. And it started off honestly out of a bit of frustration. Like I started making jokes about jujitsu because I was pissed off with jujitsu. There was a lot of political stuff that was going on with me around the purple belt level with our gym and with affiliations and not getting promoted for years and years and years. And I was mad, so I started off in work. I was a welder for 15 years. So I was on the floor in the shop and took my phone out and said, all right, let's look up a meme app. I just downloaded a free meme app, started making memes on the floor, and created an Instagram account in about 5 minutes. And people ask me, how did I come up with the idea? I'm like, it wasn't an idea. I was like, what am I doing this for? Because Jitsu? I don't know. Sure. That's the name. And I just started spitting them out there into the ether. And first of all, it was cathartic because I just wanted something to release. I wanted to yell at the wind, basically. But what surprised me was that it took off, and so many people, they weren't getting mad at it. They were actually laughing with me. It was a commiseration almost, instead of like getting pissed off that I'm hitting their sacred cow. They're like, yeah, we are stupid, aren't we? Because of that, right? Isn't that dumb? I agree. And all of a sudden I realized like I'm not alone in these feelings, and actually it turned out it's universal. So we built this community just very naturally from people that all had very similar experiences all the way up from white belt to black belt, and it's been that ride ever since.
That's cool. So you just kind of like jujitsu, right? Review a lesson tonight and then go teach it tomorrow. Like, hey, that'll be what we cover tomorrow. I guess as long as you're one chapter ahead of the class, then you're the teacher, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, with everything, you find truisms, right? So I came across all sorts of different tropes that people just feel as humans doing jujitsu. And it's simple enough, at least from my mind, to make little quips about it, one-liners about how people tie their belt wrong or show up late to class or whatever it is. There's things that are just universal, no matter what gym or affiliation you come from. And if you can find what those are and just keep pushing out funny pictures and memes about it, dude, everybody loves that. It turns out that was a massive need within the community. That there was a couple people doing it at that time, but almost nobody. I was really early to it, which allowed for that massive growth too. I filled a void for sure.
Yeah, 2015. I don't even think I was on Instagram at
Mm.
2015, but hey, I was on LinkedIn in 2004. So all right, so back up.
That's OG.
OG baby. That's cool. So you moved to Texas, had to escape Trudeau. I mean, he's so kind and loving, and he has very nice hair and a nice smile. Why would you leave such a loving dictator?
Beautiful socks too. He's really killing the fashions. No, it was not easy getting out of Canada when we did. We've had to do it twice now, and not to get political with medical opinions because I'm really not, but apparently some people are and make it very difficult to exist in the first world without certain medical interventions, including this proprietary vaccine they came out with. And if you didn't get that, and if you didn't need it and didn't get it, they didn't care. And they made your life
Mhm.
hell up in Canada.
Yeah.
I couldn't go out to public gatherings. I couldn't go to other people's houses. I couldn't fly. I couldn't, like, all of this stuff. They just absolutely threw you into second class citizen positions and made your life hell. And in the meantime, I had already lost my business between 2020 and early 2021 of continual mandates, lockdowns, restrictions, especially on the fitness industry. Man, fitness got hit really, really hard because
Yeah.
especially jiu-jitsu. How are you supposed to have social distance jiu-jitsu? I made a joke because I got out of the welding industry because of all the ups and downs of the market. I go into where they can't that just produce, and I can produce, so I'm just going to do that. Well, lo and behold, like a year and a half into going brick and mortar and taking all the risks it takes to start a brick and mortar business, the world shuts down and you aren't allowed to touch people anymore in an art that requires you to touch people. So just real bad timing on that one. But yeah, so we live mobile right now, and we have for the last year and a half. I ended up not only having to shut down the business, but also sell my house in the process. And I've got I'm a single income provider for a family of six that now lives full time in an RV that we travel around 6 months in Canada during the nicer months, and then 6 months down here in the States during the winter months.
Oh crap. That's what you're doing now?
Yeah, been doing it for a year and a half.
Oh my gosh. Because you had your own jujitsu school, right? In Canada?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And I guess you can't start a school 6 months at a time. Huh?
No. No, but in the process, like, silver linings all over the place. I don't mean to sound like I'm griping about everything because there's all sorts of good that's come out of this. Despite the bad, not because of it, but despite the bad, I had to learn how to take my value online and by really doubling on online instruction, stepping in person through my gym digitally to the world. That opened up all sorts of things that weren't and maybe wouldn't have been available to me if I didn't really need them to be.
Yeah. Hey, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely it is.
So where are you now? Are you in your RV?
I'm recording in my truck. This is why I've got the nice green screen background. This is my GMC studio.
Oh, that's badass. And do you have a strong cell signal, or you go somewhere and get a Wi-Fi?
No, we've got the Elon Musk system. We got the Starlink for mobile.
Oh, well, that's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, we figure it out, necessity again.
Oh man, that's cool. Very nice. So were you writing the book then on the road from your RV?
Yeah, yeah, the whole time.
Dang, dude, that's impressive. I mean, if you told me you knew Taekwondo, like I wouldn't be more impressed than what you just told me.
Well, that is impressive.
So are you teaching, or do you just join a local gym to keep rolling, or what do you do?
It's kind of like a gypsy lifestyle where you figure it out wherever you're at. I've taught in some places where they would like me to. I never impose on anybody, but I'm just happy to be able to get rounds. As it stands right now, I'm training at Tim Kennedy's gym in
Yeah,
Cedar Park, and Giancarlo Bodoni is teaching the gi there, so they don't need any instruction. But
yeah,
between the classes that I go there, they've got like 15, 20 different black belts there. So
yeah.
it's a nice area to not only get really meaningful rounds, but also to step back into a student role for a while, which I hadn't really encompassed for years before that. I've been in the instructor role, which is valuable. It's not valuable. It's just a different thing. So it's almost
Sure.
like a respite from having to be the instructor and just go back to relaxing and enjoying other people showing you new things.
Man, I wish I'd known you were there because I was out a few months ago, and because I'm part of Gracie Humida, so
Oh, cool.
I was going to go up there, and I didn't know anybody, and Tim wasn't around. He was out of town, and I was going to drive out from Bastrop because I was out by my mom with my mom out there. And so I went to the South location, you know, Paulo's
Apollo.
place. So I had a good session down there, but yeah, I go to Austin a couple of times a year to see my mom. So I'll try to coordinate schedules with you. And
Absolutely.
are you going to Maine?
We'll we'll see. So there's a couple things involved in that. Firstly, Biden needs to change their administration's role in vaccine requirements for flying. The U.S., I don't know if a lot of Americans even know this, but the U.S. is one of, I think, only 8 countries left in the entire planet that won't allow unvaccinated foreigners to fly in. So yeah, still not allowed. It's supposed to, it just got shot down in the Senate, and I think it's going to the House next. They're talking about May 11th, perhaps it coming down, but it all depends on votes again. They may vote to keep it enacted. And in that case, you know, I won't be able to fly from, I'll be in Alberta at that point in Canada. I won't be able to fly to Maine. If it's available, I would love to. But beyond that, I would have to try to drive down the driven border, which is a coin toss. It all depends on the border officer there, whether they ask if you're vaccinated or not. And often they don't, but if they do, it's, well, there goes your trip, you know? So what are you supposed to do? It's this crappy catch-22 scenario that, I mean, really doesn't need to exist. It never needed to, but it certainly doesn't at this point, you know?
Yeah.
But again, there's just, it's political. It's all political.
Oh, totally, dude. We could go for hours on that. I'm not happy about it. So, man, where do you want people to go? I'm going to be linking to your Instagram, because_jitsu, and that's JITSU. So you've got a link tree there. So that's probably the simplest thing.
Yep. It will be populated with everything to get you everywhere. Basically, I've got a membership site that has over 550 instructional videos people can pay monthly for. I've got instructionals on my own website, on BJJ Fanatics, on Jiu-Jitsu X. I've got the links to the book. I've got links to the rash guards, shirts, all sorts of stuff that will be up there. And if people want to hear me blabber more, I'm recording 5 days a week. You can catch me on the Social Disorder podcast, available everywhere.
Yeah, very cool. I will check that out as well. Well, all right. Drew from your GMC, man. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great catching up.
It's been a pleasure, Wes. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Have a good one.